Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. We are so excited to kickstart the TiE Youth Entrepreneurship Keynote 2020 today. I'm Shirley Nanavetti, a volunteer and event coordinator for TiE Silicon Valley, and I'll be leading you through today's journey in the entrepreneurial world. We have many exciting workshops, panelists, and speakers lined up for you, so you can get a taste of entrepreneurship and advice from some of the best entrepreneurs in the world. Our goal today is to inspire you to become young entrepreneurs and to encourage you to start now to make a change and impact with entrepreneurship. Now, I'll pass it on to AGK, TiE's president-elect, to say a few words before we begin.
Hello, good afternoon. It's great to see a community of young wannabe entrepreneurs and students who want to learn more about entrepreneurship from people who have been through that journey. So again, I'm president-elect for Silicon Valley on behalf of Silicon Valley and the entire board. I welcome all of you. I think I was reflecting on it in the morning today. This event is put together by the youth for the youth. So again, congratulations for doing that. It is this generation that's going to hold the TiE for as you all grow up and become entrepreneurs. Now, in the audience, we may have other people who may or may not know about TiE. So for those of you who know about TiE, please bear with me. But for the newcomers to TiE has been an organization that was founded by a group of Indian executives back in the early 90s to have the people of especially foster entrepreneurship, and then group came together from the South Asian community. And today that organization has grown to be a worldwide organization supporting chapters and entrepreneurs around the world. We have Silicon Valley is one of the founding chapters, but we have chapters all around the world. 4 countries and 61 chapters what we have. The purpose, as you see, Silicon Valley is all about education. That's the first thing. A lot of us are in the borderline where you want to be an entrepreneur or not. So once we have the right tools and TiE can provide that, that's a good first step. The second one is networking. You bring together like-minded people, and then they all sort of help each other and feed off the positive energy from being an entrepreneur, and just what you will experience today. And then, of course, there is mentoring, where experienced, seasoned entrepreneurs and executives will support by way of advisory or individual mentoring, one-on-one connection to VCs, and all of that stuff is done. And of course, that leads off into funding. We have TiE Angels, and we support all of entrepreneurs. So that's what TiE is all about. They're a very large organization. To me, Silicon Valley Youth Program is a very, very important program. I want more and more young entrepreneurs in their 20s and 30s to be part of it. And pretty soon you'll all become one. So what I want support from all of you is to join the TiE community very, very young, be a member, to be a charter member, and more importantly, volunteer, so that we can, there's 20,000 people who are supporting TiE Silicon Valley in various forms of engagements, and benefiting from it. Let's all be part of that journey of creating more and more entrepreneurs in the Valley and around the world. So with that said, thank you for the opportunity. Have a great day of the rest of the afternoon. Okay.
Can we go to the next slide? Thanks, HGK, for your sponsorship and support. First, the mission of TiE Young Entrepreneur Programs is to inspire, mentor, and connect high school and university students to develop entrepreneurial spirit and make the positive impact on the world. We're able to connect young entrepreneurs to TiE Global and Silicon Valley communities. Second, we have a great lineup of speakers that have generously donated their time for this event. I want to take the opportunity on behalf of the co-chairs to thank them. Let us go to the next slide, Shaylee. Also, this event is fully run and managed by an excellent group of high school volunteers, starting with Shaili. They showed high levels of dedication and passion to bring this program to you. This is just one among many that we have planned for you. On behalf of the chairs, I want to take time and thank these young entrepreneurs for all their support throughout this event. The last comment that I would like to make is all of you who joined this program, join the community, connect with us on Slack, Instagram, and Twitter. We're going to share some of those details at the end of this session. Please stay connected with us and take advantage of the programs that we want to bring forward for you. With that, Tia, can you take us through the upcoming programs?
Before we get started, let's talk about some of our upcoming events. Our first event is the TiE Youth Entrepreneurs Academy program. This will be a 6-month program starting from November all the way to March, where students will be learning how to utilize modern skills and tools to build a concept using customer feedback, iteration, and lightweight business models. If you are interested in entrepreneurship, STEM, or business, the TiE Academy is the perfect opportunity for you. Applications are now open. Our second event will take place on January 23rd from 1 to 3 p.m. The January event will be hosted through a webinar, and hopefully we'll be able to have this event in person as well. We will be having our university pitch program in the spring of 2021, as well as TiECon. Next slide, please. So what is the TiE Academy? The TiE Academy consists of 10 sessions of experiential learning. Seasoned entrepreneurs will be there as instructors and mentors. The curriculum is actually designed by UC Berkeley entrepreneurship professor, and there will be peer mentorship from the TiE alumni. As for the Global Pitch Fest, there will be awards and a $5,000 seed funding for the winner.
Thank you so much, Tia. Now let's dive into the event. Our first keynote speaker today is the one and only Anthony Trucks, former NFL player and CEO of Anthony Trucks Industries and Identity Shift. Anthony is an experienced entrepreneur with an amazing story. Anthony, please take it away.
Will do. Thank you so much for the introduction, Shaylee. Thank you, everybody, for having me. I'm happy you guys are all here on a Saturday. This is the only thing I have in my schedule today, so I made sure I gave you guys, I'm going to give you guys all the energy I got. So I believe at the end of this, we'll have a Q&A. So any questions you have, feel free to ask me at the end. If you have questions, you can pop into the chat. I believe I can see, I think, most of those. But today, here's my big thing. I want to focus on 3 words that are key to my life, and I'm going to tell you a story about how they tie in and then how it can relate to you and your entrepreneurship journey. So one is drive, second word is hive, the third word is alive. And so write those down. We will unpack those in a moment. So I want to take you back to the beginning of my life and how I've kind of got to the point of doing what I do now. Now I own a company where I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, I have employees, I have teams all over the world. I teach people at organizations such as Lockheed Martin, Amazon. I have executives that work for different companies, but I teach them how to be able to do what I call make an identity shift to operate at their peak level. And one of the biggest things that we have as individuals in this world is a ton of information, but lack of execution. The biggest problem, I think, with our society nowadays is so many people have so much to learn, but they don't apply much. And there's something about that application. There's something about being in the moment, doing the work that is what changes and what separates the people who are dreamers from those who are doers. And so my work is in that realm. And what I want to talk to you about today is what will allow you to take what you learn from this entire event and allow you to separate yourself from those that will be, 5 years from now, not at the place you could be. Now, it goes back to my childhood. At 3 years old, I was given away by my mom into foster care. So I had me, my 3 siblings, and essentially my mom said, I don't want you guys anymore. And she gave us into the foster care system. So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And at that time, this was about 1986. It was not a very good place to be a foster kid. I was beaten in some homes. I was, forced to chase chickens to earn my meals for the night. And I would almost never catch a chicken, so I'd starve. There was houses that would beat me for no reason. I was tortured in some homes. I was put in a shopping cart and forced to be pushed down a hill towards moving traffic multiple times. At one point, I was sat on a curb and forced to lick the bottom of kids' shoes till my tongue bled. All before 6 years old. So I tell you this because I started my life in a realm of not feeling like I mattered to the world. And you'll start your journey as an entrepreneur, not as that depth, but you'll start it feeling like you don't matter. Who cares? Who are you? Maybe you're just a kid, just a college student. What do you know? You haven't lived life. And so for me, I know that feeling intimately. This was my first moments and first memories of my life. And so progressing past that, I'd landed into a family, which is my family now. The unique dynamic for me at 6 years old is I'd landed into a family that was all white. Only Black kid in an all white family, very, very poor, didn't have very much. And so we didn't have in my family education as a priority. Entrepreneurship most definitely wasn't in part of the wheelhouse of our family. We were doomed in our heads to have this, this life that was not going to be that great. For 8 years in this family, I was a foster kid. Never knew for sure if I was going to be able to wake up in the same house that I, went to bed in last night, because I might be moved around or someone could be there in the morning. It was a very difficult upbringing. It wasn't until I was 14 years old that I knew for sure that the bed that I woke up in, I get to go to sleep in the night. Like, that was a unique thing for me, probably around some of you guys' age right now, was to know. I mean, imagine not knowing, like, I get to go to bed here tonight for sure. Yeah. Like, I didn't know this feeling, and I finally felt it. For the first time, it gave me a sense of a little bit of control. And oddly enough, my entrepreneur journey started around this little window here, because for the first time I had some base, some stability. I had some control, and I had a drive. That's where the first word comes in. I had some drive. And drive is the big factor that at the end of the day, you can't measure it as much, but it's it's that juice. It's that little thing in the back of your head that makes you do things when everybody else stops. It's what gets you up in the morning. It's what excites you. It's what makes you drive towards a goal specifically. And far too many people, they say they want something, but they don't actually have the drive to achieve it. So talk about it all day long. You'll ask about it a year later, never got done. Those are the people you want to steer clear of, and the person you do not want to become. So the way that I was able to increase my drive was to have some hope of what's possible. I think that's one of the things that sometimes when we're younger, we feel like we don't matter. Like the place that I came from, we don't have much of a drive, because our thought is, well, who am I? What would be possible for me? How can it even, I'm just this little 14, 15-year-old, like, I'm not going to do anything. But my drive was to create something different for me because I wanted it. And my drive was actually to be different than what my upbringing was. And so what I did, I had a paper route. I was mowing lawns. I was doing yard work. I was actually at one point being a janitor and cleaning up toilets at different offices. I wanted to find a way to make money on my own. I didn't want someone to control me. I didn't want to have, someone that forced me to not be able to buy something. I wanted control. Now, there's certain jobs where, cleaning toilets, I had a boss, but like the paper route, the lawns, that was on me. Like, I had to get up on time. I had to be the one there every single day, Sundays in the morning, getting papers out on Christmas Day. Like, that was me. And there was a pride. See, that drive that you have creates a pride for you to actually create and do something bigger and better. And if you can start anchoring down to that drive and doing the work, you start developing this really unique pride in yourself. And this pride that I have kept me driven. It was who I was, to be driven in this aspect. So at 15, I started doing these things, but I also did something a little bit separate and different. Alongside these entrepreneurial tactics and strategies and things I was doing, I started football. Now, here's the thing about football. Football is a very difficult sport. I don't know if any of you guys have played the sport, and I'm not going to go deep into sports right now, but I want you to learn a lesson that I learned in this. I started out at football as a horrible athlete. I eventually have played in the NFL. Actually, I spent time with the Buccaneers, Redskins, and Steelers. I've been an American Ninja Warrior 3 times. I've hit a buzzer on the show. I've been in multiple TV shows. Like, I've done a bunch of cool stuff now. But I started out my journey sucking horribly. I was really, really bad. I played the NFL. You would not have guessed it back when I was 14, 15. And I tried this game, and I was really horrible at it. And eventually, at one point, I wanted to quit. In fact, my drive diminished for that, but it drove for something else, right? But I turned it back on, and I found a way to drive from a deeper place, a purpose place. And man, I created a cool life. I was able to go and progress on to the things I just shared with you. And one of the big things that helped me do all this was the second word, hive. Now, hive is, think about bees. And bees, you have this hive of, bees, and they create this amazing environment that creates this sweet nectar, we'll call it, which is honey. And it's all the bees combined doing different jobs that allow this amazing honey to be created. And I like for you to right now think about your life as like honey, like sweet honey. Now, what kind of hive do you need to be able to allow you to create whatever you want to create? The sweetness of your life. You need to have other bees in your life doing different jobs. It's going to be the hive of bees around your life that allow you to do something great. So what I'm talking about here is when I was doing horrible at this game of football, I had a hive of people. I had a mom, I had a dad, I had siblings, I had other teammates around me, I had teachers, I had coaches. When I didn't want to do it, my hive drew me back in. They allowed me to have this focus to like, no, you got to keep going. They supported me. Your hive could be your friends. It could be other people working on a project with you. It could be the other buddy who wants to start this whole unique business with you. It could be your parents. There's going to be a hive of people you must collect around you that you lean on when you need to, that do the jobs that help your life become sweet like honey. You can't do it behind closed doors, quiet by yourself all day long. You need to tap in. That's why this TiE community is awesome. This is my third time speaking for the TiE organization. And they asked me to speak on a day that I don't ever actually work, on a Saturday. And I feel so much for what you guys do as a respect. This is the TiE community. Like, I respect it so much that I made sure I made time on my Saturday to come here for you guys. I'm not paid to be here. I typically charge a lot for keynotes and stuff like this. I'm here for free because I believe in what's going on with the organization. So the hive of people you have that are here right now, accessible to you, you got to tap into this. This is not a fluke. This is not an accident. This has been around for a long time with people doing great things. So make sure you always focus on your hive. And then the last piece of this, I got through, college football, NFL, and I'm not going to spend time there. I learned a lot of intangibles: how to work hard, discipline, consistency, fortitude, mental and physical fortitude to push past hard barriers. And those skill sets are things that I learned in football, but you can learn anywhere in life. And when I came out of football, I entered the world of business. I opened my first gym in 2008, sold it in 2018, so was around for 10 years. But I then pivoted and transitioned. I've done consulting. I've done speaking now. I've done coaching. I've done online course creation. I have done brick and mortar consulting. I have done all these different ventures that have allowed me to create, one, a great income for myself to support my family, and two, a ton of freedom. And here's the thing. As a kid, we don't have a ton of freedom because we have parents. But here's the unique thing. What we do right now, what I did back when I was 13, 14, 15 has created the life that I have of freedom now to travel the world. I've been all over the world. I've been to Russia. I've been to the Philippines. I've been to South Korea. I've been all these places just speaking and talking because of what I learned as a kid at the age right now. But I didn't have this. I didn't have what you have access to right now. I didn't have the ability for me to actually feel alive at this age. And so the last word's alive. And what I want you to think about is like, what makes you feel alive right now? Like back when I was by myself, I was doing things on my own. I had a drive and I had some kind of a hive, but I wasn't doing things that would future-wise give me a chance to feel alive or in the moment really feel like I was alive. And I don't know what that is for you. It's going to be unique to every different person out there. But what I want you to anchor on is if you get started now and you start finding things that make you feel alive, that bring juice to your life and energy and just joy that maybe someone else doesn't get. They may not even support you. They may think you're crazy, but you find a way to dig into these areas that give you the sense of, man, I like this. Whether somebody else cares or not, I like this. I feel good about this. You'll start learning the lessons that everybody else will be unable to pay for. There's so much learned on the journey you're about to go down that is not in books, that no one can put in words. It's an experience you get to have. Whereas you progress through your life, you go through high school, you go through college, you go through going out of college and going into a new career. Not only can you do like I did, which is kind of do your own thing, but you get to travel and figure out different areas of where your skill sets create value that create income. For me, I have been through multiple different stages of my adult entrepreneurial experience, and I've landed in a spot where I feel comfortable. I feel not in a negative comfortable, like I'm just kind of at ease, but I feel comfortable in the sense of I get up, I come talk to people like this, and I love what I do. I spent the time, I've got the background, like it makes me feel alive now. And I only wish I would have started better back before, like you have an opportunity to do now. And so as I kind of conclude my time, here's what I want to recap real quick. Make sure that you always find that thing that gives you a drive. What is the thing that gets you up in the morning, wants you to push and do more? Make sure you have a hive of people that you're around that allow you to be able to blossom when you don't feel like blossoming, that push you and keep you accountable. Then 3, make sure you're doing something that makes you feel alive, whether or not somebody else gets it or doesn't get it. What makes you feel alive? Makes you have joy for whatever you're trying to create. Because if you can progress your life in a specific way, you'll get to do some really cool things. And that could happen faster than you think. You don't have to wait. Like I had to wait until I was in my 30s to blossom. You could create a company in the next year with the way technology goes and the way education goes. You could create something this year, and years from now, come look at me and I'll be asking you questions, right? That's the reality of what you can create. So thank you for coming and joining me. If you guys have any questions, feel free to pop any of them into the chat. I believe there's some Q&As that I see coming in here, and I'm going to answer them now. So how'd you overcome trauma you had as a kid? So Siddhartha, that's a great question. I learned to forgive. For me, I realized that in life, a lot of people, man, they aren't given a lot of tools to be great. And so what I found is my mom gave me away and had a lot of things happen as a kid, these different people. And unfortunately, not good people. And some of them weren't given the tools. They didn't have a faith. They didn't have a great family like you probably have. So they don't have the tools to be great humans. They don't grow into great adults. And so what I realized was, in fact, as opposed to hating them for what they did to me, I have a sense of like a pity because they weren't given the tools to be great. And so I didn't carry this anger with me. I let it go. And it gave me an ability to climb as a human to achieve more. And if I can give you any advice when you have these things that are traumatic, talk to people about the trauma you're experiencing. Let somebody in on the secret of what's going on. And two, realize that sometimes when people are doing things, they're not doing it to hurt you. They're just doing it for themselves selfishly. And unfortunately, it affects you negatively. So give them some grace. What was your hive? Oh man, my hive back in the day was my mom. So my foster mom was really big because she was one person that allowed me to come out of my emotional shell. I was a very tight, quiet, angry little kid, and she loved me past the walls that I was putting up because I kept this wall up. I didn't want to get hurt. And that wall that I kept up, it kept out not only the bad people, but also the good people. And so she helped me take the wall down. I had amazing coaches. Coach Henry was a great coach. Coach George Flores was a great coach. I had phenomenal teachers. The Duffy, like I had some great teachers that, man, they were there when I needed people to talk to. And it was great as my hive. And then on my teammates, I had a lot of teammates that were always around that picked me up and I'd make bad plays and stuff. The hive was big. Hi, Anthony. When do you know at what time do you sell an establishment you own? Does this knowledge make you an experienced entrepreneur? I don't know if it would make an experience. I don't know if you even know when, because I got a friend right now who's about to sell his company for about $1 billion. And it's interesting because there is no definitive of when. I think one, it's going to be, can the business run without you is a big piece of it. So do you have the SOPs in place, a structure in place to where when they buy this business, they're not buying you along with it, but they're buying the business, which is outside of you. And then I think as you progress as an entrepreneur, you'll find out when it's time internally for you to press on to something new. At some point, it may not excite you, you may not feel alive as much, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing that you built something great and you have a pivot of an idea. I did that in fitness. I did it in consulting. I'm on to my 4th different venture, we'll call it, in the last 10 years. And it's okay. I've sold businesses and moved on, and I've realized that I learned amazing lessons that prepared me for what I'm doing now. Anthony, thank you. I appreciate the studio question. Thanks for your input. My question is, how do you find the right set of talented people to be and work with? I think you should go and find the people that love doing the thing you hate doing. I can put it as simple as that. When I look at businesses that I have, myself included, there are things that I am great at doing and I don't do very well. And I can try to be all me and do all of it, but then I become the bottleneck, like the kink in the hose for the flow of my business to be great. And so what I do is I find people who love doing that thing I hate. Like I don't really love editing video. I find people that do it well. So I can focus on making phenomenal videos for my content for social, and somebody can make it look great. There's things inside the business I don't do very well with overseeing people in terms of like managing groups of people that have to do tedious stuff, like check boxes all day. I like creative people, but the tedious stuff, like I don't. I have a manager that oversees like making sure the SOPs are done perfectly. So some managing aspects aren't my thing. But if it's someone that has like some skill set that's outside of yours and yours complements theirs also, now you have some magic. But don't be with somebody because they're buddies or because they're friends, because you may damage relationships. Find people, I believe, that are phenomenal at what they do outside of your skill set and actually love doing that thing outside of your skill set. What if you still haven't found your drive? I think it's Project. So what I would say is chase your passions till you find your purpose. Some people are waiting for like that thing that lights them up. And what I will tell you is I know there's something you're passionate about. I don't know what it is. And it may not be like, I'm going to, go crazy passionate, but maybe it's something like that's interesting to me. And what I found is when you chase your passions, it puts you in these different areas where you land at different forks in the road and you have choices to make. And so maybe I choose this and go down here's another fork in the road. And I choose this and go down here's another fork in the road. And eventually I get to this thing like, oh my gosh, this is it. But you never would have got to if you didn't chase the forks from chasing the passions. So chase whatever lights you up a little bit, whatever intrigues you. And you'll find at the back end of that, you get new opportunities, and keep choosing with that heart. And you'll eventually land on that thing that becomes like, man, this is my purpose. You've done a lot of different things with your life. Have you ever felt you were spread too thin? Yes. So Aditi, I have most definitely felt to spread too thin. At one point, I divorced my wife, my family, we all fell apart. We are now back together, have an amazing family. And that's what I learned from it. You have to understand how to be able to have certain ideas that will stay inside of, like, we'll call it a pen. If you have a pen of animals, like dogs, I love my dogs. Like, maybe imagine sleeping dogs in a pen, all these ideas and things you can do. And what happens is, if all these dogs are awake in the pen, they have no room to play. So unfortunately, some dogs must be put to sleep. Some dogs stay sleeping and some dogs stay awake. The same feeling that I have of like having to put my dog to sleep is sometimes the same feeling of idea being put down to sleep. So what happens is, if you feel yourself spread too thin, realize you have time to do these different things. Some ideas don't need to take up space in your head. And then once you've chosen the ones, organize your life in a way that allows you to execute on the things you want to make progress on, as well as your relationships. Do not neglect the things that you're working for in the first place. If you're saying you're going to work for your, to create something great for your family later on, spend time with your family. Like, don't just do this thing and then neglect them, right? Spend time where it needs to be, and realize that if you don't get it done today, life's going to be okay. Breathe with that one. How do you learn to become out of your bubble and reach out to new people? Sohan, it's scary, to be totally honest. It's just as hard to get rid of people that are in your life that kind of suck as it is to add new people. Here's what I'll tell you. Most of the people that are at a higher level, they get to a point of success where they in fact like to give back to people. And what happens is, so few people realize that you can actually go up and ask them questions because they want to talk to you. They don't. They're scared of what they might think, and they're going to think I'm too small. You'd be surprised at how successful people, in fact, want to help people. Like, I love helping people. I'm here doing this right now, answering questions. I love doing this, but a lot of people are scared to actually reach out and ask me questions. So feel comfortable doing it. And if they say, hey, I'm too busy, or I don't want to talk to you, it doesn't mean they don't like you. It might just be too busy. And that's okay also. And then in time, you keep building and keep asking questions. You open doors. And after a while, where you're scared to ask questions, you feel confident. Your life goes amazing, because so many people are still scared while you're not. That 1 minute left, I'm told. I have the last question. Oh, he has a lot of questions. If you guys have other questions, feel free to send them to me. I'm on social media at Anthony Trucks. I have no problem answering your questions at Instagram. I'll just do a little voice message later. But I'm going to answer the last question so I can make sure everybody stays on time today. Last question is, what if you want to own a business but can't decide what field? Try things. Like, when I go to the restaurant, my wife has no idea what she wants to eat. She gets a sampler plate. Sample things. You have time. It's okay. Like, go and see what else in the world is out there for you to do. Ask questions, interview people in different positions, job shadow them. Like, there are so many ways nowadays to be able to see what somebody does. Try it out. And then what you may find is, you may create something simple and people like it. And all of a sudden, man, I got this amazing business. Now, doesn't mean start a full-fledged business. Start a minimum viable business. Ask questions. Sell something before you actually make it. And if you find that people like it and it's enjoyable and you like doing it, build. And then if you get into something you hate doing, stop doing it and create something else you love. Take the information from the other thing you had done that you didn't love, and take the information and create something even better. Nowadays in our world, we can pivot amazingly and have great success fairly quickly with the right people around us, with the right drive and the right information that we learn along the journey. So don't be too afraid of making the wrong choice that you don't make any choice. Choose something. Go down the path. If it's not right, make it right in time. All right, that's my time. I want to keep everybody on pace. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I pray you have an amazing rest of your day. Take care, Shaylee. It's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. The incredible experiences and story. I'm sure we learned so much about you and your whole journey. And thank you so much for sharing and speaking with us today. Next up, we have Anurag Marl and his son Rishik, who will be teaching a workshop on design thinking. Anurag is a professor at Stanford and teaches design thinking to college students, helping them develop industry-changing products and ideas. Rishik is a current student at UC Santa Barbara and a co-founder at InternMart, an educational services venture focused on helping high school students find meaningful internship opportunities. Anurag and Rishik, we can't wait for your design thinking workshop. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. And that was a really tough act to follow. Anthony, if you're still on the call, what a remarkable story, really inspiring. It's a great way to start this event. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to go through my slides quickly. I would like to save some time for discussion at the end, just the way Anthony did just now, because honestly, that's where the conversations happen. That's where the ideas become reality. let me just quickly mention my name is Anurag Meral. This is Rishik Meral. And InternMart is a company that Rishik co-founded that went through a TYE program a few years back, 3 or 4 years back. His co-founder, his younger brother, had participated in that with his team. So what I'm going to do is go through some slides that actually talk about design thinking. Just give me a second. There you go. I'm going to start with this video, which really talks about design thinking. And please tell me if you can't hear the audio. Let me just play this. Can you hear the audio?
What is design thinking? At its simplest, it's a way of using a designer's toolkit.
Can you hear the audio?
Anurag, you're not sharing the video. You're not able to see the video.
Okay, let me just.
To find new ideas and discover innovative ways of solving problems. It's human.
Let me do that. There you go.
What is design thinking? At its simplest, it's a way of using a designer's toolkit to find new ideas and discover innovative ways of solving problems. It's human-centric. By putting yourself in your customer's shoes like a designer would, you observe problems from the inside out rather than the outside in, allowing you to not only answer questions, but find the right questions to answer.
So that really is a very brief summary of what design thinking is. And often people ask, well, why is it such a hot thing? Why do we need it? And the answer is, it's a very simple process that really helps you focus on the problem that you're trying to solve. Often what happens is we rush to solutions. I'm an engineer by training, even though I'm a professor at School of Medicine, but I know as engineers, we like to build things, we like to create things. And often we rush to create things when we haven't fully understood the problem. And that's part of the problem that a lot of startups actually don't really make it at the end. It's often a poorly understood need and a lot of resources that went into it in solving a problem that wasn't really the real problem. So it's rush to solution that's a problem, and that's why we need this. And the other thing is we want to make sure that we are going in the right direction, that our efforts and our resources are being spent on precisely the things that actually get you to the end goal, which is to solve the problem. And there's Carol Lewis actually said something, which is a modified version of it. If you don't know where you're going to get there. What that means is you're going to remain confused and lost if you don't really know what problem you're trying to solve. The history of design thinking, it really started in the 50s and 60s, and in 80s, it started to become really, really popular. In 90s, IDEO was formed and B School at Stanford was started, and that made it more mainstream. And my design program came about at the same time, where I'm a faculty. Fast forward today, it's now part of every single business school's curriculum. It's being used in every company as a way to train their employees. It has actually, it's kind of going beyond now. It is being used for different areas of problem solving. It's a very, very powerful framework for problem solving. That's what it is. It's a framework for problem solving. So I'm just going to talk about D School's methodology, the one that IDEO co-founder actually came up with. There are really 5 steps to it. It involves empathizing with the user, and user can be a community, it could be a system, it could be an individual, such as when you're developing an Apple Watch. I am the user here, so they focus on me. So empathize with the needs or the problems of the user. And once you've done that, you define the problem really, really well, very crisply. And then you ideate. Then you come up with potential ideas to solve it. And then you prototype it. Prototype meaning something that looks like it, that feels like it, and then you test it. And when you test it, it doesn't really seem to be answering addressing the problem that you had identified, that you defined in the defined steps, you actually go back to the empathize step and the defined step. So you sort of iterate on it. It's a very iterative process, and you can never really do it perfectly, but you get better and better. And the more you understand your user, the more you understand your beneficiary, the customer, the better is going to be your solution. So it's really a framework for that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the biodesign program because that's where I teach, and that's really closest to my heart. It's a health technology focused program where our vision is to be a global leader in advancing health technology innovation. This is now being used in 55 countries around the world. At Stanford, this program has led to, over the last 20 years, 53 or 54 companies so far. It's a pretty successful program. It has impacted millions of lives. And we have a number of stakeholders that we teach this methodology to, both globally and at Stanford. And the core of this methodology is very much rooted in design thinking, which is what's called bio-design. Instead of technology being a push, you create a technology and then you push it into the market. You basically identify the need and you come up with technology for it. That's really the essence of it. When the user is an individual, it becomes a little bit simpler. But when your user is a complex system, an eight-headed monster is called healthcare, you're talking about physicians, patients, hospitals, regulators, FDA, you're talking about payers, the people who pay for the therapies, the insurance companies. You talk about media, and then you talk about, politicians. It becomes a really, really complex system. And then that's your real user, because that's where your health technology is being adopted. You really need a more evolved process. And the process that we came up with is called bio-design process. It's got really 3 very simple steps: identify an unmet need, invent a solution, and implement. But it's a very, very rigorous process. You go down to several levels into each of these steps. You'll see how much rigor there is. But the core to this process, the most important part of the process, is identify, where you spend hundreds of hours observing your stakeholders, your users, your patients, your doctors, your nurses, your family members even, and you identify, you make lots of observations, hundreds of observations. And from those observations, you craft what is called a need statement. And the need statement looks like this. It's a very structured way to capture what the unmet need is. And later on, when we do the exercise, the workshop, I'm going to ask you to do it. So remember this. There are 3 steps to it: a way to solve a particular problem that you've identified in a particular population that you're targeting. You need to be very clear about what population you're solving it for. And then you need to be very clear about what outcome you want. If you don't have this need statement done before you start to solve the problem, you really don't know where you're going. Okay, so let me repeat. The need statement includes a way, and you can use this in any field. It doesn't have to be in health technology. It can be in education. It can be in energy. It can be in social problems. Domestic violence or whatever. Basically, the need statement is a way to solve a particular problem in a population to come up with a specific solution. So here's an example of a need statement that one of our fellows came up with, one of our fellow teams came up with, a way to perform point of care testing. So talking about testing at the care where the patient has come to see a doctor rather than being sent to a diagnostic lab. It's happening right there when the doctor is seeing the patient. For whom? Patients who have skin lesions, and the skin lesions can be all kinds. It could be a simple dermatitis, it could be cancer, in order to do what? What is the outcome you want? To enable accurate, inexpensive. COVID-19, anyone? Diagnosis of malignant melanoma by a dermatologist. So they're going to be making clear where that this diagnostics need to happen. So the need statement is extremely crisp. It's not a one size fits all. You're not going to come up with a diagnostic solution for all of the stakeholders in all of the settings. You're very clear about where you're trying to go. So that's an example of a need statement. Here is an example of a need that was identified by one of our India fellows that has become the new standard, is becoming a new standard in treating neonates who are breathing difficulty, who could die because their lungs aren't working. Preemies, especially when they are born, their lungs aren't well functional, and asphyxia is the reason that they die. And for the longest time, 40, 50 years, what you see on the left was what was used. It required 2 or 3 doctors. It required a lot of help. But he came up with a very simple solution to that. And he realized that sort of capacity and that sort of capability does not exist in places like Africa, remote parts of India. He came up with a methodology where he used a foot pedal operated device that provided a specific concentration or quantity of air to the baby, where one clinician or one nurse could do the whole thing. Remarkable solution. I'm going to switch very quickly to Rishik. This is intern mod, which is really, it has a strong TYE element to it. Rishik, do you want to talk about how you came up with this?
Right. So during high school, me and my brother typically had a very hard time, just like I think a lot of students do, trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And in a landscape where most professions are changing rapidly, it's more important than ever that students kind of need to address these changing times and sort of specialize early. And it's fine to not know what you're going to do early on. I still have trouble figuring it out, but in enabling students to find their passion a little bit earlier and have opportunities to work for whoever they might want to a little earlier and get some experience is some infrastructure that I think especially the United States currently lacks. So
that's how you came up with this need.
And this is sort of an application of that need statement that my dad was just talking about. You can see, like, this is obviously a simpler example than healthcare, but it's an example to show how modular it is and how you can fit it to address any sort of need you wish.
So here's a need statement that you guys kind of identified. You didn't explicitly state it that way, but I guess it's a need for a mechanism to bring meaningful professional experiences to high school students, which most of you are, so that they are prepared for an education that prepares them for college and that prepares them for professional career. So that's, and in the interest of time, we could actually spend a whole session on it, but just wanted to share that with you, and we will talk a little bit more about it during the Q&A. So how can I use design thinking? So this is the workshop part. So here's what I want you guys to do. I assume that most of you are either entrepreneurs already or are interested in becoming entrepreneurs or working at a startup. What I urge you all to do is to think about the problem that you're trying to solve. It's very important to articulate that problem. So I throw a challenge to all of you to come up with a need statement. It can be a crude need statement, that's okay, but it has to have 3 elements, very important. It has to have the problem in it, the population, and the outcome. What is the problem you're trying to solve? For what population, and what is the outcome? If you can tweet your responses to my handle at Meral and SVTYE with a hashtag there, I would like to see those, and there's a reward actually at the end of it if you come up with a really good need statement. I will actually make my time available to you to discuss that need statement, half an hour of my time. I'll choose 3 winners, but you have to actually tweet that need statement. It has to be a need statement that you will, and it's okay if you're not an entrepreneur today. If you're just thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, you're thinking about a problem that really bothers you, I would love to see that. So I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes, and during this time, if you want to bring up questions that you want to ask, feel free to do so. But over the next 2 minutes, I have my phone here and I have my Twitter logged in. I'm going to see what responses I get, and I may pick on a couple of those to chat about as to how you guys have come up with. And if you have any questions about what this need statement really means and how to structure it, I'm happy to talk about it. But it's pretty straightforward when you think about it. There's a whole process to approaching this, and we spend a whole year teaching our fellows on this. So I don't expect you to be really deep and sort of really, really well formed in your need statement, but this is a good start. The best way to do something is to start doing it and learn iteratively, which is the kind of DNA of design thinking. All right, so I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions, but in the meanwhile, I'm going to go into my Twitter account here and see if there are any tweets from you guys. All right, any questions? I'm going to pull this up here. I'm going to stop sharing. There you go. Yeah, so the question is, could you elaborate a bit on how design thinking spills over to lean startup or agile? That's a great question, and a key proponent of lean startup is a good friend. He's a fellow professor at Stanford and at Berkeley. So essentially, lean startup or agile methodology is really about being nimble, being iterative. and which is a key component of design thinking as well. I think the only place where design thinking maybe goes deeper into is the user needs. I think even in lean methodology or agile methodology, you do have that. So you're doing iteration because you're learning as you're doing iteration. So in a way, need identification is embedded in it. In case of traditional design thinking, you basically spend a substantial amount of time upfront in understanding the need, and only then do you engage with the solution. With lean and agile methodology, you could actually get off the gate a little bit quicker and iterate much more quickly. But both have very similar sort of philosophies underlying it. What do you observe in identify phase? That's a great question. So in healthcare, for example, our fellows actually, as a team, by the way, cross-functional team are really important. Doctors, engineers working together, observe the doctors. How is he suturing the patient? Why is it taking 4 hours to do open heart surgery? Could we do, so you basically observe where they see challenges. So the more observations you have about the problems that you see or challenges you see or delays you see, even if something bothers you, something seems discrepant between what it's supposed to be and what it is, you can actually write that down as observations. So you make hundreds of observations in the setting where your solution is supposed to be, that the problem that you're trying to solve. And from those observations, you craft need statements. And it's not one need statement you are going after. You're coming with lots of need statements, and then you want to prioritize. So that's the other thing. Often you hear about this thing about fall in love with your problem. Yes, but only when you know it is a true problem. So put in the effort to understand what problem you want to solve, understand a range of problems that particular situation presents itself, and then select based on a very structured methodology as to which problem you really want to go after, the size of the impact, the urgency of the problem, and your ability to solve that problem. Hopefully that answers the identify observation for identify phase. I think there was another question that went away. Okay, let me actually see if there are any, I got 1 minute. I'm going to see if there are any tweets that have come up with your need statement, because I'm really curious about it. I don't yet see this. Let me see. Okay, I think.
Hey, Anurag, one quick question. How long does it take to do the design thinking right? I know that there are different different time scales. Can you actually elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So with biodesign program that we have, where we have fellows that come from somewhere around the world, but also we have fellows right here at Stanford fellows that work in cross-functional team. They spend about 3 months in observation, 3 to 4 months in observation, hundreds of hours of observation, lots of discussion on that within the team. And then need statement formulation is about a month. And then selection of a need happens at the end of those 4 months. And then they get on to the invent phase. So about 4 months is what they take. But you can do it faster if you are spending a lot more time doing it. But it could take longer as well. And as we discussed earlier about it being iterative, you could start with an identified need early on after a couple of months of needs identification. But then you could actually keep that in mind that you may have to iterate on it, and you're not really locking in on your solution until you've really truly iterated on the need and the concepts that address that need. So there are a couple of different ways of doing it, but I would say a few months of solid work. That's a great question, Aditi. How do you know if your solution is worth pursuing? This is where the second phase comes in, where you again come up with lots and lots of concepts. Don't fall in love with one particular solution, and don't fall in love with a solution that you think only you can do. First, think about what could be the best solutions to the problem. Come do lots of brainstorming. There's a whole methodology around that in design thinking, and then you kind of stack rank them. Sorry, you kind of identify whether it really addresses the need. If you've done your need statement really, really well, you know how closely the solution maps on to the problem. So how well does it address the problem that you identified? And then you get feedback from your stakeholders. You sort of, the prototypes that you have, you actually go and test those out in the setting. So for example, it's a software that manages a patient flow in a acute ischemic stroke, you actually go into the setting where the stroke patients are being first received, and then they're being moved to a neurologist interventional neurologist for stroke treatment. So you kind of see whether that framework, that solution, that the prototype that you have will actually do that really, really well. So you test it out. Testing and iteration of the concept is the best way to know whether, and you will never fully know whether it's the perfect one, as long as you are, you're reasonably certain and you have iterated enough, and enough meaning, in case of a startup working in, let's say, education space, it might be a matter of a few months. I'm not talking about years because that's too long, but I'm not talking about a week. That's too little. For wicked problems, Samantha's question, for wicked problems like COVID, maybe my teams are dealing with quite a bit of that right now, that are dynamic in nature. What's a good tool to optimize between ideate, implement, iterate? Great question, because this is a pandemic that's evolving very quickly. You needed diagnostic tools, and we fail. I mean, all 4 or 5 technology areas where we needed to address COVID-19 effectively, we have not succeeded. But from those failures, we have learned, like diagnostics, for example. Right now, there are 6 or 7 different types of diagnostic solutions that are out there, and each of them plays a role. So that quick off the gate concept development based on some need that you understood in a fast moving pandemic like COVID-19, it's important to do that and then go back and test and be ready to pivot to a different use case of that technology or a different technology that addresses the problem as you move forward. So I think design thinking still allows you to do that as long as you're proactively keeping in mind the feedback that you're getting. I think there was another one. What's the first step to executing a business idea you may be set on pursuing? I think once you have identified a problem that you want to solve and started to think about a solution, make sure that you have the right team. Most important part of execution of a business idea is having the right team. Do you have all the right people to address, to basically take the solution all the way to the end? If you don't have those people in your team as full-time team members, can you actually rent or borrow that resource? So that's really an important element of it. And then you basically think about what sort of additional resources you need beyond the team to address the problem. I think there were some questions that just went away. There are no open questions, it says, but I think for wicked problems, I think we are done with most of the open questions then. So I think that really is end of my time. If there are any additional questions, please let me know. But you can reach out to me through my Twitter or my Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm happy to accept your requests. But it seems like we got to move on. Thank you so much. How do you work around the problems with the teenagers with resources? I'm happy to answer that offline. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Anurag and Rishik. This was really helpful and insightful, and I'm sure we can all follow this method to come up with world-changing ideas. Before we move on to the next segment, I just wanted to remind everyone that we do have a raffle. So if you stay for the whole event, one of you will be chosen and receive a $50 Amazon gift card. So make sure you stay for the whole event to be entered in that raffle. Next up, we have our next keynote speaker, Allison Lee. Allison is a co-founder at Hemster, the first on-demand tailoring service that lets consumers find their perfect fit in store or at home. All starting off with not being able to find the right jean size, Allison has been able to expand and grow Hemster rapidly in the past 2 years. Allison, we are so excited to hear more about Hemster and your different experiences. Please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys see and hear me? I just want to make sure I'm doing this correctly.
Yep, we can see and hear you.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm really excited to be here to share my story with everyone here who is interested in becoming potentially an entrepreneur, or just kind of like seeing the inside view of like the early stage startup. And I think it would be a really good way for me to start is just giving you a very candid and transparent background story on how I got started. So I think one thing that defines me differently is I actually did not grow up here. I grew up in South Korea till I was in 8th grade, and I ended up moving to Irvine, California when I was 13. So you can imagine that, once I went off to high school, like I spent a lot of my high school years feeling like I had to catch up on, like the social scenes and cultural differences, but like language barriers, and obviously like studying for my SATs and trying to get into like the best school I could. And at the same time, my parents decided to start their own business, which they had never done before. So they had 3 options in Irvine that they could start. So first option was starting an ice cream shop. The second one was a gas station. And then the third one was the network of vending machines. So I remember when I was probably like a freshman year in high school, I remember them showing me like different plots of stores, and they were asking for my opinion on which business venture they should take on. And they ended up going with Empire of vending machines. So that really became like part of my high school years, which is a little different than, normal teenage years, I would say. So I do remember spending a lot of my after school hours. I'm doing a little like accounting and learning like administrative work of like the businesses. But I certainly wouldn't say that, that's my insight into or introduction into startups. But I do remember feeling that, oh, my parents didn't know anything about starting a business, and they just kind of went and did it. And I think that really helped me understand that there is nothing to fear that much, because, always you can course correct, and then something will come out of it in a positive light. So I think once I did go off to college, I went to UC Berkeley, I decided to kind of like venture out and try to find my own path. And because both of my parents are very academics, they tried to kind of get me to consider to become a lawyer, or, go get a master's degree, go do like business school, whatever it may be. And I just wasn't interested in any of those things. So I ended up starting my very first company. This was in 2012. It's called Happening with 3 Ps. It failed spectacularly, and it was 4 of us working on it all together. But even though it failed, I have such fond memories of like, okay, what does it mean to like really question a status quo, right? I think that really made me feel attracted to becoming a founder. Is like, oh, wow, like if I see something that's not working in the world, I don't necessarily have to just kind of like sit back and tolerate it. I can actually like do something about it through technology or building my own product or marketing, all these different sectors of business. So even though that first company, it wasn't really real, it was our pet project, and it did fail really bad. 4 co-founders of that company actually did go on to become legitimate founders of 4 separate companies. So I think, it's fair to say that we actually did have like a really good experience working on that pet project. So once I got my first taste in becoming that tech founder, my passion had to wait a little bit, because once I graduated from college, I didn't go into like the early stage startup right away. I actually joined 2 separate Series D companies, especially in the data monetization side. So I worked on both of those companies. It was very big. They were about to IPO. So I felt that I was learning a very special niche skill as like a monetization strategist. So what that means is I was looking at all of data segments that were being collected either through like Facebook or social media, or any of like the data segments that's available to purchase. And I was looking at different ways to strategize. How can I monetize different type of data segments? And in that way, I learned data science. I learned about how to structure like the data schema correctly, so it's easy for me to productize it and really bring it to market later down the line. And after a couple of years in that very intense training, I finally joined more of a early stage Series B company called Peel Smart Remote. And at this time, they were backed by Alibaba, and they had just raised their Series B. They were about to really go to market with their new product. So it was a really exciting time. And I was their second employee for the entire monetization team. So I grew that company's income or revenue from $20,000 to about $18 million in 2 years. And that really gave me an idea of like, oh my gosh, like what does it mean for me to really own that top line revenue side for an entire company? And how do I work with engineers and product managers, marketers to really bring that idea to life, and also to bring it to actual market with the new users who is now paying for my services, right? So after 2 years at that company, it was a lot of fun. I really, really poured my like soul and sweat and my blood into it. And I was really excited to learn like a B2B2C playbook, which means I was understanding how monetization works through B2B relationships that translates into B2C direct consumer side. And from there, I started thinking about, okay, what are some consumer facing problems that I'm actually really, really passionate about? Because I think at that point I realized that being an early stage employee wasn't necessarily filling my void or my desire to become a founder, because at the end of the day, founders really have that that say in deciding where the company goes. And I think I was really craving that. And I was like, okay, how can I make that work with my own ideas? And that's when I started thinking about a lot of fit and sizing issues within e-commerce. So, if you think about it, individual person or a shopper could be in between sizes all the time. And actually it's about 89% of United States shoppers feel that they're not necessarily one size. But it's weird that we have been trained to pick one size from all of these different retailers who have, kind of chosen these sizes for us. So I was thinking about how can I collect individual customers' idea of the perfect fit, and how can I bring that into the shopping experience? And part of it was, my immigrant background. When I was growing up in Korea, tailoring was a very organic part of the shopping experience. And when I moved here, I noticed that no one really seemed to care to customize or tailor their clothes to their actual body sizes. And that was a really big culture shock to me. So I was thinking that I can really innovate this outdated tool of tailoring. And in the time that I'm doing that, I can actually data mine from tailoring processes. So I can capture this idea of the perfect fit per customers. So that's kind of how Hemster was born. And once that product was there, I decided that, because I knew B2B2C playbook really well, I really wanted to use that to work with the brands and the retailers. So instead of going direct to consumers who would be just my end consumers, I decided to work with brands like Madewell, Michael Kors, Stitch Fix, Farfetch, all of these brands who are offering Hemster services today to their shoppers. And that becomes my customer acquisition channel for their data and their Hemster profile. So when you think about your business model, normally the funnel is that you want to think about how you're getting your customers, right? And because I have this B2B relationship, what is happening is that I'm not spending any money in acquiring these customers. So that's how I have kind of made sure that my total customer funnel is working from the partnerships. And that's how I'm crafting my margins and my unit economics that way. So that was beginning of 2017 that we had like officially launched Hemster to a lot of the brands. And I kind of want to really dig into what it was like during those early stages, because I think it's really important for any founders to be really candid about all the struggles that you actually do face during these early stages. And I think for me, it wasn't necessarily, the struggles weren't coming from the limited resources, because I think resources being limited actually forces you to be more creative about your solution and your product. And I actually found that part more exciting for me to work with very limited pool of resources. But I think what really was a bigger struggle for me was this sense of uncertainty and being okay with working with products that are broken, right? So I think one thing I always challenge even like the younger entrepreneurs is that you have to kind of like ask that question honestly to yourself that, okay, am I a person who would rather deal with a problem to make a solution perfect, Or am I okay with bringing a solution to the world that I know is broken, but really living to improve that brokenness over time, knowing that it will really never achieve the perfection, right? So I think that probably really differentiates the founders who are okay with the brokenness of the product versus later stage employees who are working really hard to really take what's working but really perfecting it and optimizing it to a specific solution or channels, right? So for me, that was our biggest learning as a founder, is that, oh my gosh, like my product really in the first like couple stages, it's so broken, it's barely functioning. That's why it's like the MVPs, right? But you have to be okay with bringing that to the market and just understanding what you can learn from these experiences right away. So because I didn't come from like a fashion background, when I first had my MVP live, what had happened was I didn't have anyone to sell to, right? Because I didn't know any of these brands. So what happened was I made a list of San Francisco boutique shops. So there was about a list of 50 really cool stores, independently owned. And I basically went into every single store every single week for about 3 months. So I can learn about their pain points. I could meet their managers. I could meet their owners. I could meet their customers. And I really understood, okay, how can I tweak my MVP so that these people will want to use and offer my services to their customers? So at the end of 2017 summer, we launched with about 50 stores in San Francisco through the boutiques. And then that's what I used to really collect the right metrics and case studies that I could leverage to get to the next set of brands, right? Because I knew that from the independently owned brands, they're easier for me to kind of like convince them to use me without a lot of proof. But obviously, if you're talking to like a corporate or a bigger brand situation, you want to present how you can actually benefit your partners from these partnerships. So that was about 2018 when I started talking to, Michael Kors, True Religion, Aloe Yoga, Anthropology. And it was a similar tactic that I had used initially because, again, I didn't come from that fashion background and I didn't know how else to get in touch with these people. So I went into Westfield, San Francisco Mall, again, every day for probably 3 to 4 months. And I met all of their managers. I knew their manager's schedule, their assistant manager's schedule, their key holders' schedule, their names, what they liked, what they didn't like. And that's how I closed my first like 10 brands to actually bring Hemster to their shoppers. And obviously, 3 years later, like we don't do that kind of direct sales anymore, but that is how we started working with bigger brands and building our reputation. So obviously, a lot of the founders, you are the only sales person for a very long time, and you're the only marketer, you're the only product person, especially as like a solo founder. I had to be that person for the entire company for years, right? So that's another thing I think a lot of the successful founders don't tell you is that, it's really lonely and you have to be ready to really own this problem for months or years at a time to really make sure these solutions that you're bringing to the market could work eventually. So that was beginning of 2018 that I was launching, and we were bootstrapped for quite some time at that point. And I finally went into like my first 2 cycles of fundraising. And I think I mentioned earlier that, I'm a solo founder, I'm an immigrant founder, I'm a female founder, I'm a first-time founder. So all of these tags actually work as like a disadvantage, right? Because a lot of the investors will look at my profile and my company and say, okay, well, she's got a cool idea. I like her business model. Her revenue is growing, it's going well, but I don't know if I trust her as a founder and CEO because she doesn't have the track record that I'm looking for. So that was actually a lot of my first rejection emails from the investors were that, hey, you just, don't really fit into my founder mold that we're looking for. We love the company, we love these metrics, but, we're just not going to really back you as a person. That's how I took it. So it was a really interesting moment to be, a minority founder in that sense. And, I think that really made me want to prove it to the investor and obviously to my team too, that, you know, even if some of these professional investors don't believe in me, like I can still make it work and I can really grow the company. So we ended up doing a very small round in 2018. And then I knew that I had a year to really grow the company, to prove the early stage investors wrong in 2019 when I went out to raise again. So in 2018 to 2019, we showed about 30 times of year-over-year growth. And at the same time, we were launching a lot of new brands, and we were launching nationwide deals with Paige Denim, Aloe Yoga, Anthropology, Farfetch, Stitch Fix, all of these really good brands. So when I came back out in 2019 to finally raise my post-seed round, I remember it was a very different conversation I was having with the retailers and the investors, right? So that's another learning I had, was that if you're going into this journey, like no one can really like make you quit. So I've seen a lot of, you know, my founder friends who started the company at the same time as me, but they have decided to like fold and, you know, leave this chapter behind. But until you decide that for yourself, really no one can make you do that. So as long as you have the resilience and mental and emotional grit to keep going, you can always turn around your product and your company. So understanding that founders and entrepreneurs are the biggest asset to the company is really important, because I think when I was first starting out, I would really work myself to the bones, and it was not a strategic decision because, you know, I was the biggest asset, but I was always burnt out. So one thing also to be cognizant of is that how can I make this a sustainable working environment so that I can really give it my 100%, but for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So that's another thing, obviously, I didn't really think about when I was in mid 20s, because, you know, I thought I would always have this much energy and I could just go and sell and close all these deals forever. But obviously this is my 5th year running the company and I can't do the same things anymore. So this is just some of the learnings that I'm sharing with you, that it would be great for you guys to start thinking about it now as you're growing to become the amazing entrepreneurs that you're destined to be. But also at the same time, like, just ask yourself like a very honest and authentic question of, would I enjoy living in that environment? And would I be ready to take on that emotional burden for years at the end? And if there's no right or wrong answers, but at the same time, if you think that's not something I want to do, there's no shame in, you know, trying to find other path that fits into that mold, right? Because I see a lot of the founders who go into this path thinking that this is theirs, but they kind of don't necessarily understand that there could be other creative paths that you can take that can fulfill your entrepreneur desires too. But that's kind of where things are with me and my founder journey right now. I think I am getting closer to end of my time. I just want to make sure we have enough time for all the questions about, you know, my journey, my company, my fundraising experiences, especially if you are like person of color or female or first-time founders. I think I can give you very practical advice on how to deal with the ecosystem as you go out. But yeah, I'm happy to open it up and take any questions from here.
Thank you so much, Allison, for that inspiring presentation. So we have some questions from the audience. So how did you know you had an idea you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I knew it in 2 ways. So first was, you know, when I first thought of Hamster and the idea of like what the product could be, I couldn't stop thinking about it for like days. I was like immediately obsessed with this idea. And I noticed that I was like just drawn to it naturally. And I think there has to be some emotional passion tied to your idea so you can like fuel your desire to keep on working on that. But obviously the second part is more logical. So when I came up with this idea, I kind of made a mock pitch presentation and actually brought it to about 3 different retailers through my, somehow I found it within my network. And I pitched it as like a very objective, okay, if this was available to you guys, like, would you guys want to use it today? And it was a unanimous yes from all 3 different levels of retailers. And they gave me a very interesting and similar answers that gave me understanding of like what was broken from the e-com side. So I think once I had my emotional buy-in to the problem, but also from the market, they were validating that this product could work. I think those two coming together, I just kind of knew that at that point, it was worth it for me to give it some portion of my life to decide if this could work out or not.
Awesome. I think we have time for 2 more questions. So I think Arnav Bhatt wanted to ask what difficulties you faced while reaching out to different brands during that direct selling phase of your company.
So I think the question was like, what were the difficulties of like the direct sales process? I mean, I think it gave me a lot of learnings about like being a salesperson in general, right? And I think the biggest thing is like, how do I position my product so that it's beneficial for the client, right? I think, of course, I can pitch it from my perspective of like how they should use it. But I think pivoting that into like understanding like, okay, what are the brands really missing? And how can I actually drive their KPI metrics? And how can I actually drive their sales that they care about, right? I think pivoting that and like almost changing my narratives to really fit their pain points really helped me understand that. But other than that, I think, I mean, everything else is like a challenge, right? Because you're just going into the stores and you're hoping that you're meeting these like, owners or managers. It's a lot of like charming and relationship building. So it was as sometimes you take it personally when they say no to you, and just like taking your emotion out of it was also a big learning for me too.
And for our final question from Nishita, what was your biggest obstacle that you had to face?
I think my biggest obstacle so far was probably like when I went to go raise money for my company. So I think because I was such an unproven founder at the time, like I remember this one partner meeting where I was pitching my company to about 4 people in the room. And, I was going through my metrics. I was really presenting. I was giving my all. And I was kind of looking around. And I remember seeing one investor on his laptop. And he was on Amazon.com. And he was like shopping for children's slide, like as I was pitching. And I'll never forget that moment because I felt like I was really just like giving my all and like trying so hard to make this work. But to them, I was just like another pitch, right? Another pitch that they were like not even that interested in. So I think that moment of just like feeling kind of small in the room, but like really like having that emotional strength to like work through it. I think that was like a big obstacle of like me learning to be a bigger person and like stronger person. And that really helped me to just like, yeah, like own bigger problems as my company grew.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Allison.
Sure. Thank you guys for having me. And obviously, if you guys have any other questions, you guys have my email, but also let the organizers know, and I can always help answer more direct questions too.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing and speaking, Allison. Your company and experiences were really incredible. So now we'll be moving on to our next workshop. So once you have a business, you need to find investors and people who are interested in giving you money so you can further grow your business. To help all of you with that, Fatima Diko will be leading our next workshop on how to develop an investor pitch. Fatima is currently the founder and CEO of Jetpack, a peer-to-peer hyper-local marketplace for last-minute items. Fatima has extensive and successful experience pitching to investors and will be sharing how to develop that perfect investor winning pitch. Fatima, we're so excited to start your workshop. Please take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for the awesome introduction. Really enjoyed the tail end of Allison's talk as well. So for the time that we have here, I'm going to show some slides for the first half of this, and then I really want to open it up to the audience so that people can ask any questions. So now I will share my screen, and then we will go from there. So before I get into this, half of this is going to be about nailing your pitch, but half of it is going to be about actually making sure that you have the right idea that you're pitching, because a pitch is only as good as the idea that you're presenting. So I'll bring up a few watch outs around like the actual idea, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you can nail that pitch and bring in investor dollars. So a little bit about me. I went to Columbia University for undergrad in engineering. Then I went to Stanford Business School. I've worked at Procter & Gamble. And I started a tech company a few years ago. We've raised over $1.5 million. And I've learned a lot along the way around raising money, and hopefully I can bring a lot of that into this presentation. What I'll say is that at the foundation of anything, if you have something that's truly innovative, you have a product or a service that's increasing the efficiency or the effectiveness of something, then you're going to be able to nail your pitch. At the end of the day, a good product sells itself. A good company sells itself. So just keep that in mind. For the slides, I'm going to quickly go into the actual process of having your idea ready, iterating on the idea before the pitch, which just means, you know, improving it, changing it, tweaking it based on learnings, how to actually deliver a great pitch, and then how do you have motivation to keep going, either once you get a no, like Allison said, which pitching is a numbers game, so you get a lot of no's and you have to keep pushing, or how do you keep going once you do have the money now, right, and you have to deliver on what you promised investors. So let's start with ideation. Success is not delivering a feature, it's learning how to solve the customer's problem. So the root of any pitch is about how you're presenting a new solution to some problem. If you can nail that in the pitch, the rest of the company starts to solve itself. And I see that, or the rest of the pitch starts to shape itself. I've seen a lot of people focusing their pitch a lot on all the things that this new product or service can do, and less on the problem. So that needs to be the foundation of anything that you're talking about. The second thing I'll say is that great ideas happen when two old ideas meet for the first time. When you're pitching, half the time people think that your pitch needs to be, you know, a brand new thing that no one's ever done before. But at the end of the day, investors aren't necessarily looking for you to have this, you know, novel idea. They want to know how you're either making a old idea different or better. And so people think that they don't want to bring up the competitors in the pitch because that will make their pitch less strong. You actually do want to bring up competitors because it shows that A, you've done your research, and B, you have some idea of how you can be fundamentally different. And usually if no one's ever tried what you're doing, then you probably want to ask yourself, like, okay, why has no one done this? There might be something that you may be missing that you want to get in front of. These are just a bunch of ideas, you know, ended up being billion-dollar companies, but they weren't necessarily anything new, you know. Facebook, before Facebook, there was MySpace. Before TikTok, there was Vine, you know, Lemonade, which is renters insurance, you know, multi-billion-dollar valuation after their IPO. People were doing renters insurance the old-fashioned way. Under Armour, you know, there's companies such as Nike and Adidas. And so I bring this up to say you do not have to be the first person to do something. You just have to be different and better. And in a pitch, you just want to get in front of that and make sure that you're articulating that in the best way possible. Secondarily, you want to ask yourself, do you have a vitamin or a painkiller? A vitamin is like a nice to have. You know, it's great if you can have your daily vitamin, you take it every day. A painkiller, however, is something that's like eliminating a pain. It's something that's more of a necessity, more than a nice to have. And I think that when you're pitching, You want to get to the problem or the solution that's focused on a problem that is a huge pain point for people. And so if that is not clear, if it's not clear that your pain point is something that people will pay money for and it's something that really bothers people, then chances are your pitch is not going to be as strong as you may want it to be. Let's shift gears a little bit, and we're going to open this up for questions. So that's why I'm just flying through this. Iterating. People think that success is like you came up with an idea, you launched it, people love it, you're pitching money to grow it. That's not exactly how it happens. In fact, success is usually this really, really insane process that's not linear at all. And so when people are pitching, it's important to note that you don't have to have everything figured out in the pitch. You need to get in front of what are some of the problems you may fix or you may run into, and what is your fix going to be when you run into those problems. Because at the end of the day, investors are giving money to you as a person and not your idea. Half the time your idea is not going to even look like what it started as. And so you have to show that you are somebody who's super resilient. You're someone who can look at something that's not working and pivot when necessary. And finally, you're somebody that is more invested in the success of the company more than just the idea that you have. And those are the attributes that investors are looking for in a pitch. They're looking to find people who are going to find a way by any means necessary. In fact, Airbnb, as many of you may know that story, the 3 people went from, renting an air mattress to building this multi-billion-dollar company. And they were told no many, many times. In fact, there's a really good Medium article by Brian Chesky, who's the CEO of Airbnb. He took screenshots of 7 different investors telling him no via email when he pitched the company. He blocked out their names, but he showed all the responses in the email. People will never be on other people's mattresses. The size of this opportunity is too small. A lot of really smart people, really smart investors gave him these rejections as he was pitching. And he saved all of these, and then he put it in a Medium post to articulate the very point that I want to bring up here, which is that it is a resilience game at the end of the day. And half the time you just have to survive long enough to get lucky. So before going into fundraising, you almost need to have a mindset of people are going to tell me no. And if for every 30 people who tell me no, one person says yes, that's enough. So if I want 3 people to say yes, and I want to raise, or if I want 4 people to say yes, I want to raise $1 million, I want to get $250K from each of them, then that means that I need to pitch at least 120 times, right? It's a numbers game. So you have to really do the mental work beforehand to not take rejection personally. Similar to Allison, I had a similar experience where I was pitching someone one day and they were like on their computer eating lunch and never looked up. And so you have to really have thick skin going into fundraising and know that it is not a function of you as a founder or your idea. It just means you need to continue to be resilient until you find people who believe in your idea as much as you do. Now let's go into actually pitching. So we talked a little bit about your idea, how you don't necessarily need to be first. You just have to be different and better. You need to be solving a true problem, and you need to show how you're going to be somebody who's going to be resilient and who's going to iterate on this throughout the trajectory of the company. So let's talk about the actual pitch. There's a couple things that you want to make sure you nail during the pitch. The first is keep it simple. There's a website, and I can send the link out afterwards, that shows the very first pitch decks of a lot of companies. So Airbnb is in there, there's BuzzFeed, there's a bunch of like real Snapchats is in there, and you look at their pitch decks and they're very simple. They weren't like hundreds of words on there. They didn't go into like all the different features. They were very, very simple. And so at the end of the day, the more simple your pitch is, the better it is for you to to deliver your message in a way that's very impactful. Secondly, you want to nail on how you're different. So this is a theme, it was brought up earlier. That's one of the first questions they're going to ask. If you're launching like a social app, or if you're launching a fitness app, if you're launching a music app, the first question is, how are you different? And it can't be a very light answer around, like, we have this one feature, or we do this, like our app is more user-friendly. In some cases, having a more user-friendly app can be different, can be a competitive advantage, but you really want to have something that's defensible and like you can articulate in 1 to 2 sentences how you're different. Third, plan to make money. You have to get into the minds of investors. So at the end of the day, they want to know how this is eventually going to be something that brings them money. In order for you to do that, you need to understand how investors make money, right? So the way that VC works, venture capital works, is that they're looking for really big returns, right? They're looking for unicorns, which is another term for billion-dollar companies. They want like a 40x return, 50x, 100x return on their investment. And they're looking for 1 in 40 of their companies is going to do that. So that's the nature of VC. They assume that many of the companies in their portfolio are not going to make it, but one of them will be like an Uber or an Airbnb. And that means, either they will exit. When you talk about exit, that means you're either going to go public, IPO, or another company is going to buy you. They're going to acquire you. So those are like how you exit. So you need to be able to tell them, right? Even if you're like a super early startup, a super early idea, how do you ever get to a point where Amazon wants to buy you for $1 billion? And this is not necessarily the only way to have a successful business. Like, please do not think you need to have this like crazy return. There's so many companies that have really great businesses that just are making revenue and they're great. But if you're pitching to a VC or if you're pitching to certain people, you have to understand, how does that person make money? And how do I position this in a way where it's attractive to them so they can understand how they would make money from this? Why you? The fourth point is why you? Why are you the best person to solve this problem? If you have this really great idea for this, fitness app, and you've never worked out a day in your life, you hate fitness, but you think it's a great opportunity, it's going to be harder to solve the problem. That's why a lot of really good pitches start with the founder talking about how they experienced the problem, or their parents or their grandparents experienced this problem, or their friends did. It's very personal. Some of the best pitches are very personal because it helps the investor understand why you are the person to solve the problem. And one thing I'll say is that data gets people to believe you, but stories get people to care. And so the more you can put stories into your pitch and the more you can bring it to life and make it emotional, that's what's going to get people's attention. The fifth point is size the opportunity. Help people understand how big of a problem this is, right? Like, how many people experience this problem? If you have some solution for, like women who want to like color their hair, but they don't know like what color to pick, and you have this like, you have to help people, especially investors who may not have had that problem. You should point out some numbers, like X million women dye their hair every month, and like X% of them like get the color wrong, or like help people understand how big of a problem it is. Sometimes there's very like niche problems that people just don't know about. That doesn't mean it's not a big problem. It just means you need to help them understand how big of a problem that is. Finally, bring it to life. If you have a demo, bring it in the pitch deck, and make sure you try the demo before, because one thing I know about demos, it will always go wrong during the pitch. So kind of, try to do as much as possible so your demo doesn't break. Even if you don't have a working product, sketch it out, draw it, help people see it. They want to like see what this thing can be, even if you don't have anything built yet. Finally, market validation. Do you have any evidence that people want this, right? And it can't just be your friends said it's a good idea, right? Your parents said it's a good idea. As much as those are great motivating factors, market validation is not that. Market validation is either you threw something out there and you got some good responses, or there's really good data out there, like strong data that shows that people actually have this problem. And then finally, what have you done? Even with $0, did you do anything to push this forward? Because what investors want to see is like, okay, if I give you $1 million, are you actually like, how hard are you going to work to push this forward? You know, did you just sit on this idea because you didn't have money? Or did you actually do everything possible with $0 to show that this could be something? Then they're going to be a lot more excited to give you money to take it to the next level, rather than, hey, I have this idea, give me money. I wasn't able to do anything because I didn't have any money. That's not usually what's strong. And then the last thing I'll say, the motivating piece, why? Why are you doing this? You know, you need to know exactly why you're doing it, because you're going to get no's all the time. You're going to get investors telling you it's a terrible idea. And you're going to have to push through that if you really believe in it. And one thing that's going to help you do that is if you know why you're doing it. Like, and really, really know why you're doing it on a very deep personal level, because that's what's going to get you by. And the last slide that I'll say, you know, keep learning along the way, keep reading. You know, one quote is, the way to get started is to stop talking and start doing. You know, no more talking about the idea, just do something. Do what you're passionate about. Make sure that passion is at the forefront. You know why you're doing it. You're excited every day to wake up early and, you know, like grind it out. And then at the end of the day, you know, from the late Steve Jobs, the thing that separates, you know, successful entrepreneurs from the non-successful ones is pure perseverance. So are you going to keep going, right? Like, the only way you fail as a startup is if you run out of money or if you give up. And so do you have that? Is the idea so good, as Allison mentioned, that you're going to dedicate the next few years of your life to it? You want to answer those questions up front, because it's going to be hard to pitch investors if you yourself don't believe in it fully. So definitely keep going, have that energy, and I'm going to stop there and hopefully open it up for questions, and hope that a lot of this information resonates with a lot of you. Cool. So here's some questions here. So should I just go in order here? Let me go to okay, cool. All right. I just saw some of these notes here. Sorry, my camera was like all up in the screen. Okay, great. Question, say the problem is in a niche area and you conclusively know the product is a couple of years early before the general crowd warms up to it. Do you postpone, pivot, or do you persist? I would get in front of why you believe that the market is going to shift to wanting that problem or wanting that product in the future. You know, a lot of times the investors will ask, why now? Like, why is now the right time? So you need some data to show that there's early signs of people wanting this sort of product. Secondarily, how should we reach out to investors? Ask for intros. So one of the strongest ways, I personally haven't heard a lot of great success stories from just cold emailing the whole time. Of course, you know, there are people where that has worked for them, but the best way is usually like an intro. So anytime you meet with a founder, like let's say you and I grabbed coffee or you and I had a Zoom meeting, you know, during these times, ask like, hey, are there investors you can introduce me to? Here's my pitch deck. Can you share this around to investors who may be interested? And every meeting you have is an opportunity, and ask directly, like, I want to be introduced to investors. Can you set this meeting up for me? Those are usually the strongest founder introductions to investors. What do you suggest we do in order to understand what investors want from ideas? Before any pitch to an investor, you may want to look up that investor's website and look at their portfolio. So look at what are the companies that they invested in, right? And then also every investment fund has some sort of thesis. So some thesis of what they believe that drives their investment decisions. And so you want to understand what's their thesis, who are the other companies they invested in, and you even want to research a little bit on those actual investors, like where are they from? You know, what are their stories? What are they passionate about? I always like Twitter stalk, LinkedIn stalk investors before, because it helps me understand like what are the things that they value, right? And those are going to be the things that will help. Okay. What do you suggest we do in order to, what is your favorite Rumi quote? Oh man, I have so many favorite Rumi quotes. there's one I really love. It says, yesterday I was bold, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I want to change myself. I really like that. I think the biggest thing we can control, either just personally or from a leadership perspective, is who we are as people. Even with starting a company or networking, you always want to be the best person you can be. And I think that that's going to take you really far. People remember their interactions with you, just how Allison remembered, that person shopping on Amazon. Like, people remember all your interactions. And I've had investors tell me no, but I still followed up, and I was like really positive afterwards. And then it ended up turning into an opportunity later. So always be the best version of yourself in business, and it will pay dividends in the long run. How can you tell what are some good companies to pitch to? You want to look at whether or good VC funds to pitch to. You want to look at if their investments look like your company, right? If they only invest in later stage companies, like they don't invest in any sort of mobile apps, and like you have a mobile app that's super early, it may not make sense to pitch to them. So you want to make sure that the stage, what stage they invest in, what are the categories that they invest in, what's the check size that they usually write, those sorts of things are important. And half the time people think that it's just the entrepreneur pitching to the VC. It's also the VC should prove to you why they're a good person, why you should take their money, right? You should know, are these VCs where their companies go off to be successful? Do they do a lot outside of the money to help their companies grow? Because it's not just about the money, it's about what are the opportunities, the network, the partnerships that these VCs can open for you. So they should be just as passionate about growing your company as you are. How far should we work into the product before you go to investors? I would say enough, like you've gotten as far as you can go without any money, and you've proven the market validation very clear. Very clear. Like anybody could look at your data and it's clear that people want this product. That's very important. It shouldn't be like, hey, we're going to get this money to go figure out if people want this. You should be very clear that you have strong market validation. And then also you should have an understanding of like, I can't do any more without capital. So like I built this MVP, I put it out in the world, and now I know that I need to build this feature, or now I know that I need to do X, and I can only do that with your money. And once I get your money, look at where I will be. Like that's really the narrative that you want to put. Like, hey, I noticed this problem, I built a solution, I know that what I built is not the best, I put it out there, I got some really good feedback, or I got some bad feedback and I know why, and here's how your money takes me to the next level. You really want to nail that as you're pitching. How to gain motivation after experiencing setbacks and rejections. I read a lot about the, I read a lot, and I think I'm out of time here. I'm out of time, but the thing I'll say there is I read a lot on the success or resilient stories of other founders. So like the Brian Chesky narrative that I brought up about how he kept going. Like for me, reading those stories are really important, just to know that it's not just me. Everyone goes through this. Every big company, every big idea started with this sort of resilience. And yeah, that's what I'll say there. I really, really love being able to bring this information to you. I know that we're at time here, and I hope that that was valuable for all of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the workshop, Fatima. This will definitely help students aspiring to start their own business and even looking to expand and grow their current companies. So now we will be moving on to the last segment of our event today. Get excited for the Becoming Successful Young Entrepreneurs panel. So here with us today is our moderator, Apurva, and our panelists, Tarini, Arshia, and Kyle. So all successful young entrepreneurs, they will be sharing their experiences, challenges, and advice to all of you students so you can become successful young entrepreneurs just like them. Apurva and panelists, please take it away.
Hi everyone, welcome to the TiE Youth Entrepreneur Panel. I'm Apurva, I'll be moderating this panel today. First, a little bit about me. I founded my own art gallery when I was 12 and have given keynote speeches at several events since then. I'm a firm believer and advocate for youth and gender minorities in STEAM, so I'm so excited to talk to these three amazing youth entrepreneurs today. First, we have Tarini Dang, the founder and managing partner of Brave 14 Capital. And we also have Arshia Mehta, the founder of Youthivism and Pure to Water, and Kyle Giffen, the co-founder of NeuroClarity. Are they here? Hi, Arshia. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi. Actually, okay, it works now. Never mind. Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hi. So I think everyone here today will learn a lot from these three. They'll give you some insight into the sometimes intimidating process, and I hope they inspire you in your own entrepreneurship. To start off, could you all briefly introduce yourself and your business? Tarini, could you go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for attending, and thank you, Apurva and Shaylee, for the opportunity. So I just want to start with, I've always been interested in entrepreneurship at a very young age. I started with opening a simple club in my school where I just taught entrepreneurship to kids, and this was in middle school, which led me to writing my own book, which is available on Amazon now. It's called The Young Aspiring Entrepreneur, where I talk about like the age, gender, social biases that entrepreneurs at a young age face and how to overcome them. And also, like, it's a step-by-step process on how to become an entrepreneur. So if you guys ever want more information on that, feel free to either email me or just search it up on Amazon. I've co-founded a women empowerment Instagram account called Classy Women, where my role is to help give advice to several women across the world. These are women from the developing countries as well, like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. I give them one-on-one advice on their issues, like it would be like career advice, relationship problems, to something serious like domestic violence, gender discrimination, etc. And I've also been able to successfully raise an $870,000 venture capital fund from institutional investors in the United States. And my goal is, I've gone to like several speeches. I've been to the Women's March, the Collision Conference. I've spoken at TiECon before. My goal is to encourage more teenagers to be involved in venture capital and entrepreneurship, especially teenage girls, more women in the venture capital field. That's my goal, to encourage all of you to at least learn about this field, the venture capital field, the industry, and know that this is an option for all of you. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. That's super inspiring. As you can see, she's very impressive and we can learn a lot from her. Next, Arshia, could you give a brief introduction about you and your business?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Hi, everyone. My name is Arshia. I'm a freshman at Stanford this year. I'm super interested in entrepreneurship. Actually, just 4 years ago, I was in your place because I was a TiE student myself. So definitely learned a lot from this program, and you're definitely in the right place. In terms of my projects that I've done and the businesses I'm a part of, I'm the founder of Youthivism, which is an organization that strives to bridge the partisan gap that exists in civics education right now. So we create curriculum and unique content for tens of hundreds of instructors across the country, specifically about current events and politics, so they can implement these curriculums and modules into their classroom. And it's a national organization, and we have about, I want to say, 100 high school students working, and we've impacted 300 to 400 middle schools. I'm also founder of Pure to Water. And Pure to Water is an organization that strives to bridge the gap in water impurity, specifically targeting women who are usually bearing the brunt of the burden when it comes to rural water poverty in developing countries. So worked to kind of develop that product in middle school through the science fair and kind of scaled it in high school, and attended a bunch of conferences that were really rewarding. So I can definitely speak about those as well if you all are interested. In particular, the Global Entrepreneurship Summit was a really rewarding experience. And yeah, I'm also happy to speak about my experiences in entrepreneurship at Stanford. I'm involved in two of the biggest entrepreneurship clubs at Stanford, BASIS and ACES. They sound pretty similar, but they're two different clubs. And yeah, so I'm happy to speak to what entrepreneurship looks like at the college level as well, for those of you who are interested. And yeah, super happy to be here and happy to take any questions as well.
Great, thank you. And finally, Kyle, could you give a brief intro about you and your business?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and to the other two speakers. Very inspiring, and proud to be on the panel with you. Right now, I was just climbing at Castle Rock, so I'm in the car, as you can see, but it's a beautiful day here at Castle Rock. And yeah, for a little bit of background on me, I'm a senior at Berkeley. I work at the Entrepreneurship Center at my school. And since the moment I kind of entered school, realized that I did not want to go into the corporate world and work a desk job for a large corporation. And this was a path that I saw a lot of people around me going towards, in data science and software engineering and humanities, and just trying to find small roles at large companies. I'd always been very much compelled to create something myself, and found that the opportunities surrounding me were just so abundant that I would be a fool to not take them. And I'm currently working with a team of 4 engineers, computer scientists, on a platform that does remote biometric research. It's called NeuroClarity. And this research typically costs $10,000 to $20,000 for companies who are in marketing, UI, UX design, entertainment, or education or scientific research. It costs them a very large amount of money to conduct. And what we're doing is democratizing it. We're making it very cheap. We're making it very easy to access and easy to use. And the goal is to kind of eliminate this barrier for a lot of industries and scientists to conduct this research. So if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to me, but I'm really excited, and I'll pass it back to you.
Great, thank you. So how this is basically going to work is I'm going to ask a question to one of you so that we don't have people speaking over each other. But after, if someone has something to say about the same question, please speak up. We'd love to hear what you have to say. So let's get started. So entrepreneurship starts with an idea, but it also takes a lot of motivation and planning to even get it rolling. Kyle, what drew you to pursue entrepreneurship in your fields of interest, and what motivated you to keep it going?
Definitely. What drew me is kind of a reflection of what I just spoke to. It was the idea that you can have sort of the freedom to use the resources around you in whatever way you want, and to really capitalize on the fact that there are all these opportunities, as opposed to kind of taking the more traditional route. And what was the second part of your question right there? How do I stay motivated?
Yeah.
Yes. Exercise and sleep and eating well. I think that these are 3 fundamental things that if you do them, your life will be better. And drink a lot of water. And then just keep reminding yourself, Fatima emphasized this at the end of her talk, but why are you doing what you're doing? And if you don't have a clear answer to that, it's going to be really hard to stay motivated. So try and make it personal, the relationship between you and the startup or business that you're working on. Solve a real problem that compels you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think self-care is something a lot of, especially high school students, sometimes forget about, but it's a huge component on keeping yourself motivated and healthy. Now I want to touch on the difficulty of finding a balance between your business and education. Arshia, how did you personally find a balance between tasks and activities related to your business and your school-related work?
Yeah, I want to say that I have figured that out completely, but it's still a journey, as it is for, I think, all of us here. Just some tips and tricks that I guess I've kind of figured out really worked for me. The majority of my work did end up peaking in high school with Pure 2 Water and Youthivism, but I think just really overusing your Google Calendar as much as possible, it truly becomes a necessity in college. So you want to develop those habits early. For me, I like to track the tasks that I have to do in the day using like a Google spreadsheet where I just kind of write down, and then I can like green the boxes if I've done it and red them if I haven't. So that way I can track my productivity along the days as well as kind of keep track of what I have to do. Just staying organized, I think, is really, really helpful. And being willing to reach out for help to your instructors if you need it is really important as well. Of course, you know, there's people always say that education comes first, but when you're doing something that's so impactful and meaningful to you, it's really hard to create that line. And for me, I never really strive to prioritize one over the other. But I would say being super organized and being diligent, and not only scheduling time to work on schoolwork, as most of us do already, but time to work on your projects and your businesses would be really helpful as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the advice that I would give. It's a whole different journey in college because, you know, you're not really stuck in school from like 8 to 3 every day. The schedule's a lot more dynamic and it's almost a lot more liberating than high school. So I would say that if you can figure out high school, college will come pretty easy to you as well.
Thank you. And also, could you talk about if you were able to further your business at school, for example, in high school or at Stanford?
Yeah, sure. So as for Youthivism specifically, because it's kind of about education equality and bridging the inequity that exists. I definitely utilize resources at my high school to kind of take that forward because we are, you know, reforming curriculum in schools. So we definitely did a lot of conferences and skill building with the unified school district that I'm in. We did a lot of stuff with teacher surveys and feedback, and we'd have them implement some stuff. We ran a few workshops with the school district. So we definitely took use of all the resources we had available and all the people who wanted to help us at high school. When it comes to college, I found that it's really easy to take what you're learning because each kind of entrepreneurship club that I'm in has its own plan of action. So, you know, you're learning different things. Right now, you're learning like go-to-market strategy and basis, and I'm learning something completely different in ASIS. But taking those concepts and, you know, kind of making them work with what you're already doing and kind of reinforcing those concepts is really helpful. You can't necessarily completely merge the work, obviously, because, you know, you've done so much, you're kind of it's a little bit hard to completely overlap, but I think that you can use the resources you are given in college absolutely to further it. And on top of that, you don't even need to stick to entrepreneurship clubs to further, you know, your projects. Like I also this year I'm doing a fellowship called the Intercollegiate Civil Disagreement Fellowship with 4 other partner institutions. Basically, it's like 5 colleges sent like 8 delegates of students to meet every Friday and just discuss politics from a nonpartisan point of view. And so that's super cool, and it's pretty in line with what Youthivism is doing, right? With this whole nonpartisan education thing. So you can find other opportunities to kind of mold yourself into the best person you can become to lead your organization as well, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm sure that really helped our youth entrepreneurs on how to navigate school and business, because definitely I also have struggled with sort of keeping some tasks for my business and some for school. But during this pandemic, a Google Calendar has been super helpful. And Tarini, being so young, have you ever found it difficult to navigate corporate environments? I know you've worked a lot with companies, and I'm just wondering do you have any advice for young entrepreneurs trying to reach out to companies and to high places?
So when you're reaching out to different companies or investors, VCs, anyone, I think the main thing is to have a good pitch deck, especially if you're a startup, if you're a young entrepreneur, having everything clear and decided, like your go-to market, what's your market, targeted buyers, targeted customers, more statistics on your product. There are, if you Google it, there's like Uber's perfect pitch deck examples and Airbnb's pitch deck examples. So having that and knowing your why. I think the previous speaker, Fatima, also emphasized this a lot, but I think I need to stress on this more, having your why. What's your reason? Why is your company different from others? Why is your company, what drives you in your company in that leadership position? What drives you every day? Why do you wake up every day? What is like that driving factor, that motivating factor that brings you to do what you do or what your company does? Having that why. For example, the reason I started my venture capital fund, my venture capital career is because if you look at it, according to the World Economic Forum, it will take 208 years, I think more probably, to close the gender gap. And according to me, the faster way to do that is venture capital. If you're able to fund more women in C-suite roles or minority people in C-suite roles and female founders, encouraging them, it's going to be much faster to narrow that tech gender gap. That's my why. My goal is to create like a female founders venture capital fund in the future, probably maybe like $100 million fund targeted just for female founders and minorities. Having that why. And now with that being said, when you reach out to adults, there might be some unconscious bias with some adults, not all, of course. There have been several people who've been very kind and inspiring for me and have really helped me. I have great mentors. But at the same time, there will be some people who, if it's not even just unconscious bias, just directly just straight up bias. And how to navigate that? Always like maintain your sanity. You have to be polite with everybody, and everybody teaches you something. Each experience you have with an investor, with another company, with a mentor, and an advisor, anybody, that experience will teach you something also. So like you learn something. If somebody rejects your company's idea or decides not to give you funding, you learn from that and change that so that the next investor meeting you have or the next mentor meeting, company meeting you have, you're growing, you're learning, you're changing your idea to better perform. I think that would be my advice.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm sure all the youth entrepreneurs here have learned how important it is to take risks, but sometimes we don't really hear concrete examples. Can you all share a time that you took a risk and whether or not it paid off? We can go in order of Kyle, Arshia, and Taridi.
Sure thing. So wait, a time where I took a risk and it did pay off or did not pay off?
Either way.
Either way, okay. Yeah, so this actually time is about to come, but I'm taking next semester off of school instead of graduating to pursue the startup that I'm working on full time. I don't know if this will pay off yet. I really want it to, but what I do know is that I'm not down to spend the full tuition for online classes, as I see, despite these really compelling events like things like this, where you're actually getting students involved and it's intense and they're learning and they're acting and they're doing things rapidly. A lot of my view of online education right now is that it's lacking in some of the fundamental benefits that it's delivering on, and that it's just not the same level of rigor that it was in the past. And so I've made the decision that I'd rather take the time off of school to pursue this full time and fail miserably and completely regret it, but then learn about all the mistakes I made and use those to inform my decision making going forward. This is a big risk. My mom doesn't like it. My grandpa doesn't like it, but I'm doing it because I know that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I would kick myself in 20 years if I didn't. So maybe that's a good example.
Great, thank you. I hope it pays off. And Arshia, could you share?
Yeah, sure. So an example of a risk that I have taken with respect to youthivism would be that my senior year, around November, or around October, actually, one of the partner organizations we had been working with for a few months reached out to us and kind of casually mentioned that, they'd love to fly us out to their conference in DC. I'm based in the Bay. They'd love to fly us out to their conference in DC and, fully subsidized and just kind of get some more youth voices. The conference was about equality and civics education. So, definitely up our alley. But we didn't really know, too much about what the conference would look like. We were both my co-founder is a year younger than me. And so she was a junior at the time and I was a senior at the time. We didn't know all that much about what to expect. It was kind of our first conference that we would be attending, as a part of youthivism completely alone. So, I think that to some extent was a risk. We missed a few days of school to attend, weren't really sure what we would get out of this conference, but we ended up meeting so many valuable connections that our growth just skyrocketed for the next few months. And we are still in touch with some of the people that we met at the conference today. And looking back, we always tell ourselves like we were almost not about to go because we almost didn't know what to expect. Like we were kind of like, should we miss school? Like, should we really just kind of fly to DC and, just kind of do it on a whim? But it paid off so much. And so I think that, it's not really a crazy risk or anything, but I think it speaks to like, take every opportunity that you can take. I think that I really did try to do that as much as I could in high school, and I'm trying to do that in college as well. It's really rewarding, and even if 9 out of 10 times they don't pay off as well as you'd expected, that 1 out of 10 times they do pay off will really just change the course of your life or your business. So yeah.
Definitely. I think sometimes the small decisions can really result in really big payoffs. So thank you for sharing. And finally, Tarini, would you like to share a risk that you
Sure,
took?
thank you. You guys all have achieved so much. Great job on overcoming all those risks. So my risk would be when I co-founded my Instagram account with my friend Komal. We started by empowering women just through quotes. And that was working great. Everyone was happy. Everything was fine until I decided to help women one-on-one through advice. Just advice through Instagram's direct message system. And that was a big risk for me at first, but I think the biggest risk was at this time I was like in 6th grade, about to be a 7th grader. I hadn't told anyone in my family about this or anything. And one of the times I got a message from a girl, and she was a domestic violence victim, and she sent a picture of her bruised arm, and it was completely bruised. There were scars everywhere. And at that time, I was scared. This was a risk for me. Not disobeying, but hiding this from my parents was a big risk for me. I remember showing this to my mom, and she said, "Are you sure this is safe? What happens? She's a domestic violence victim. She lives thousands of miles away from me on the other side of the globe. How safe is this?" And looking back, the experiences and teaching women and helping them at least stand up for themselves, helping these domestic violence victims learn from their past experiences and know that they're worth more than just that incident or whatever somebody else, their husband, tells them that they are, letting them know that they're worth more than that. Those experiences has helped shape me who I am today. It has helped me grow. It has helped me mature. It has helped me realize that this is what happens across in the world, that such incidents, especially learning this about these incidents when you're in like 6th, 7th grade, they're new to you. And those experiences have indirectly shaped me to become more resilient, more motivated, more inspired to focus on my goal to help more female founders. That's one risk. The second risk is through my venture capital fund. I'm obviously I can't predict anything, but 10 years from now, who knows, my venture capital fund might just entirely fail, or it might just go really well. You never know, especially with COVID right now, the markets are a little different, they're fluctuating. However, I obviously can't predict the future, but what I do know is that, like Kyle said, 20 years from now, I'd probably kick myself if I didn't take this opportunity, if I didn't pursue this goal. And either way, I'm just going to look at it as in what's the worst case that could happen? We're all young at this time. The worst thing that could happen is, let's say you fail. You have your entire life to make up for that failure. Might as well fail at 15 than fail when you're 45, right? So there's a lot of learning experience that you could learn from just failing also that could help you in the future. That would be my advice.
Definitely, thank you. I think a lot of times people want to go into entrepreneurship to change the world, and it's really important to know that sometimes things will scare you, because there is a lot of things that are scary when you're trying to change the world for good. So thank you for sharing your experience. And we do have to wrap it up really quickly, but I was wondering if you could travel back in time and give your younger self advice on starting your entrepreneurship journey, what would you say? One sentence, yeah. And then we can go Kyle, Ashia, Tarini again.
One sentence? Okay. It's going to be a sentence with 2 clauses. Okay. Don't listen to almost anything anyone tells you, comma, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. Am I allowed to explain the first part of that sentence?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I don't mean to say that you shouldn't listen to anything someone tells you, but a lot of people will tell you things. They're speaking from experience that it might not be the best advice. They might be limiting themselves and therefore trying to limit you. by telling you you can't do something or that you shouldn't do something. And you should really trust your gut and not allow the people around you to influence you in a negative way. Comma, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. That's my advice.
Great, thank you. And then Arshia, would you like to go next?
Yeah, this is pretty niche, but I think it is the most important feedback I could give myself, which is do not take market research for granted. If you are trying to solve a problem that you are only partially exposed to, and you know that there are people that can speak to the problem in a more critical lens for you to examine before you start your venture, you need to listen to these people. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've just talked to someone who's experienced the problem and a light bulb has gone off in my head, and I realized that I was approaching a problem completely wrong because I was drawing assumptions about the market without actually evaluating it first. So do not take that period for granted. Listen to the people who you are trying to serve. Yeah, that's probably the most valuable feedback I can give.
Definitely, thank you. And finally, Tarini, could you give a sentence?
Well, the first part would be little girls with dreams do become women with vision. And the second thing would be keep pushing, keep asking questions, keep pushing boundaries, and keep persisting. Perseverance is key. And better days are yet to come. I know that's not one sentence, but I just think that it's important, all of these. I would love to tell my younger self.
All right, thank you so much, Tarini, Arshia, and Kyle. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and you've given some wonderful advice for the young entrepreneurs here. We wish you the very best in your future endeavors, and I'm excited to see what you accomplish. And thank you to the youth who have joined us today. I wish you guys the best of luck in your future pursuits. And if you feel comfortable sharing your contacts, could you maybe drop like an email or something in the chat if people have further questions to ask you? Yeah, thank you. I'll pass it back to Shiley now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Shaylee and Apurva, and it was lovely learning from all the other two panelists, Arshia and Kyle. You guys are really inspiring.
Thank you, all of you. All of your journeys and companies is so inspirational and encouraging. It was really an amazing panel. I'm sure all of our students here watching will take in all the advice and information you shared with us today. It was really great. Thank you so much, guys. Before we close off, I have a couple of TiE volunteers here with me to share some information about our upcoming events and then the winner of the 2020 Keynote raffle. Tia, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all for joining us today. Just a reminder, we have a few super cool upcoming events. Our first event is our TIE Academy program. If you're interested, please sign up using the link below. The second event will be our January entrepreneurship event. We will also be having a university pitch program in the spring of 2021, as well as TiECon. We hope to see you all there. Please make sure you go and follow all our social medias to stay updated. Now I'm going to hand it off to Arnav. Let's talk about some of our raffle winners. Thank you.
Now, let's reveal the winners of our raffle. Everybody joining in today is entered as a thank you for taking your time joining our event. The prize is a $50 Amazon gift card. And the winner is Arnav Bhatt. We will send you your prizes via email soon. And congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arnav, and congratulations to our winner. We want to thank all of our guests and speakers who are here today for making this event so amazing and inspiring our youth about entrepreneurship. We also want to thank all our volunteers and TiE members who were able to help with this event and make it possible. It really wouldn't have been able to be possible without you guys. This concludes the TiE Youth Entrepreneurship Keynote 2020. I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us here today, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I wish you the best in all of your entrepreneurial journeys.